So today we are doing Daf Yod Dalid or Amud Yod Dalid. We are really on the bottom of Yod Gimel Amud Bet. So we were in the middle of a discussion here, Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Just a bit of a recap. Reish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan the following question. He said, Reish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan the following question. He said that, we have a Mishnah. It teaches that the Megillah is read on different days. Some people read the Megillah on the 14th of Adar. Some people read the Megillah on the 15th of Adar. And some small villages could read even earlier from the 11th and on. So the question was, we have a pasuk. It says, Lo titgodedu. And we learn, one of the things we learn from that pasuk is Lo ta'asu agudot. That you cannot have fractions of different groups of people doing different things. You can't have a group of people doing one thing and another group of people doing another thing. Rashi explains the reason is it looks like two groups are following two different Torahs. You can't have that. So how can you have one group reading the Megillah on one day and another group reading the Megillah on a different day? How are you able to do that? That was the question of Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan, he said, what do you mean? Why do you have a question on this? You could have asked this any place. Why are you asking over here? What about other cases? So that's where we're up to. So we're by where it says, the last line on Daf Yod Gimel, the last line on Daf Yod Gimel Amud Bet, the last line. It says, V'ha bet Shammai matirin hatzarod la'achim. Ubeit Hillel Osrim. So Rabbi Yochanan asks, Rabbi Yochanan points out to Reish Lakish, he says, why are you bothered about different people doing different things? Beit Shammai allowed a tzarot, the co-wives, to do yibum. Beit Hillel said they're piturot from yibum. So you have people in Beit Shammai's town doing like Beit Shammai and people in Beit Hillel's town doing like Beit Hillel. So why don't you ask from there? So says the Gemara, Misavrat asu Beit Shammai kedivrehem, lo asu Beit Shammai kedivrehem. The Gemara says, what, you think Beit Shammai actually did what they paskined? Beit Shammai did not do what they paskined. So this segues into the whole, next long piece of Gemara. That did Beit Shammai do what they paskined or not? Now, what exactly?
Or just for this subject?
Overall. It's a very important general question in the dynamic of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Beit Shammai argued with Beit Hillel, but did they actually do what they paskin? So, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Asu ve'asu. Rabbi Yochanan says, of course they did what they said. So Reish Lakish is saying, what, you think Beit Shammai did what they paskind against Beit Hillel? And Rabbi Yochanan says, sure they did. Uplukta de Rav v'Shmuel. And it's the same machloket of Rav and Shmuel. So Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan are having the same machloket as Rav and Shmuel. De Rav Omer lo asu. Rav says Beit Shammai didn't do like their psak. Lo asu Beit Shammai k'divrei. Shmuel Amar asu. Shmuel says they did. Asu v'asu. So the Gemara clarifies a little bit. What time frame are we talking about? Because at one point, the Gemara in Eruvin says that there was a bat kol that came out and said halacha is like Beit Hillel. So the Gemara wants to know, what's this discussion? Did they do or did they not do? We're talking about before the bat kol came and said halacha is like Beit Hillel, or we're talking about after the bat kol? So emat, ilema kodem bat kol. If you're going to tell me that it's before the bat kol, so then maita ama demand amar lo asu. Why would Beit Shammai not do like their own psak? If it's before any bat kol, so Beit Shammai paskins this way, why would they not follow their psak? Vela leachar bat kol. If we're talking about it's after the bat kol, so my ta'ama demand amar asu. How do we make sense of the opinion that says that they did like their own psak? What they did against the bat kol? Bat kol came out and said halacha is like Beit Hillel. You're still doing like your own psak? So the Gemara is gonna work it out, and we can understand the question either way. So the Gemara says, "Ibayitema kodem bat kol, ibayitema lachar bat kol." I could explain to you this machloket of whether or not they did like their psak is before the bat kol. I can also explain to you they have a machloket after the bat kol. Ibayitema kodem bat kol, v'chegon de Beit Hillel ruba. The case would be, it would be before the bat kol came and said halachas like Beit Hillel, and Beit Hillel is rov. Beit Hillel has more quantity of talmidim. So leman damar lo asu, according to the opinion that says that Beit Shammai did not do like their own psak, the Beit Hillel ruba, because even before there was a bat kol, they understood Beit Hillel was the rov. So that would explain the reason that they did not do their own psak. Uman damar asu, but according to the opinion that says no, they did their own psak, they would argue and they would say ki azlina bat aruba hecha dechiada dininhu. When do we say you follow the majority, you follow rov? That's when they're both equal, meaning in chokhmah they're both equal. So you follow the rov that Beit Hillel had rov. Hacha Beit Shammai mechadeditve. But in our case, Beit Shammai they were sharper. So it's true Beit Hillel maybe had more followers, but Beit Shammai was sharper. Therefore they felt, even though Beit Hillel is rov, they followed their own psak. So this is one way of understanding the machloket. They're arguing about before there was any bat kol. One opinion says, no, Beit Shammai didn't even do like their own psak because Beit Hillel was rov. The other opinion says, no, Beit Shammai was sharper, and therefore even though Beit Hillel was rov, they did their own psak. That's one way of understanding the machloket. All before the bat kol. But according to this, after the bat kol, then everyone agrees that they did like Beit Hillel. But the other way of understanding the machloket, v'baitim la'achar bat kol, other way of understanding the machloket is after the bat kol. Man damar lo asu dehanafka bat kol. The opinion that says that Beit Shammai did not do like their own psak because there was a bat kol that went out. Man damar asu, Rabbi Yoshua damar ein mashkichin bebat kol. The one that says that Beit Shammai did like their own psak even after the bat kol, because they understand like Rabbi Yoshua. The Rabbi Yoshua says, "Ein mashkichin bebat kol." We don't listen to the bat kol. Rabbi Yoshua's famous, very famous Gemara of Tanur Shalachanai. Gemara brings this over there that Rabbi Yoshua said that "Ein mashkichin bebat kol." Right, the bat kol proved like Rabbi Eliezer. He said, "No, we don't listen to bat kol lo b'shamayim." So either way, we have two ways of understanding the machloket, but the point is that there's an opinion that says that Beit Shammai did like their own psak. So the Gemara says, "Uman damar asu, karinan kan lo titkodedu." Whoever says that Beit Shammai did like their own psak, so there's an issue of lo titkodedu. You can't have Jews keeping different halacha. Everybody has to be more uniform. You can't have different bundles or groups of Jews. One guy is doing this and the other guy is doing something else. Lo ta'asu agudot. You can't make yourselves different groupings, different bundles. So Amar Abaye answers and he says, Ki amrinan lo titkodedu kigon shtei batei dinim be'irachat. When do we say lo titkodedu? When you have one city and you have two batei dinim in one city. Halalu morim kedivrei Beit Shammai v'halalu morim kedivrei Beit Hillel. One Beit Din says to do like Beit Shammai, and the other Beit Din says to do like Beit Hillel. That you cannot have. Aval shtei batei dinim b'shtei arayot leitlan ba. But two batei din in two different cities, one city does like Beit Shammai, one city does like Beit Hillel. That's not a problem. The only issue is within the same town. So Abaye holds that the Beit Shammai did like their own psak, that's only in their own town. But they wouldn't have one town that would be half like Beit Shammai, half like Beit Hillel. Rava argues with this. Amar le Rava, v'ha Beit Shammai u Beit Hillel kishtei batei dinim be'erachad dami. He says, no, Shammai and Hillel, they were like Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, they were like two batei dinim in the same city. Because you had cities that had people from Shammai and people from Hillel. And he says, even so, they would each do their own psak. So Ela Amar Rava, so rather, how does Rava explain how that's possible? Ki amrina lo titkodedu kegon beit din birachat. Peleg morin kedivrei beit Shammai, peleg morin kedivrei beit Hillel. When is there a problem of lo titkodedu? If you have one beit din, one vad harabanim, and half of them say like beit Shammai and half of them say like beit Hillel. That for their the ones that follow that beit din, that's a problem. Aval shtei batei dinim be'ir achat leitlan ba. But to have two batei din in the same city, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. So meaning there's no issue of.
That's not a problem.
That's not a problem of lo titkodedu. So once again, let's just explain before we continue. Let's just explain the two opinions, Abaye and Rava. The question is, how can you have Beit Shammai doing like their own psak and Beit Hillel doing like their own psak? There's an isur of lo titkodedu. You can't have groupings doing different things. So first Abaye comes and he says no. The whole issue is when you have one city and two different groups in the city doing the same thing. Two batei din in the same city. One is Beit Shammai, one is Beit Hillel. That's a problem. But different cities and different minhagim is not a problem. Rava says no. Even in the same city, if you have two separate batei din, that's not a problem. The problem is when you have one Beit Din that's in charge and half of them are saying Beit Shammai, half of them are saying like Beit Hillel. But if you have two separate batei din, one Beit Din in this yeshiva of Beit Shammai, one Beit Din in that yeshiva of Beit Din, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. This is machloket Abaye and Rava, what the parameters of lo titkodedu are. This machloket is actually extremely nogea for Sfaradim and Ashkenazim in the same town, right? That's lechora like two batei din in the same town. Abaye holds two batei din in two different towns is fine, but two batei din in the same town, that's not good. Rava holds two batei din in the same town. There's still no problem of lo titkodedu because it's two separate batei din. You can't have one beit din that half of them are like this and like that, but two separate batei din in the same town is fine. So is machloket rishonim how to paskin over here. The Rambam paskins like Abaye, the Rif and the Rosh seem to paskin like Rava. So the post can bring down that Rovadia brings down, others bring down that by Sfaradim in a town of Ashkenazim or like in a yeshiva of Ashkenazim, Rovadia has a tshuva about Ashkenazim on the 3 weeks they don't shave from Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. Sfaradim we shave until Shabbat Chazon, Shavua Shechalbo. So he had a question. They asked him, Bachorei Yeshiva that were in Yeshiva by the Ashkenazim, they asked, are we allowed to shave or do we have to follow our Yeshiva? So he said, Meikar Hadin, you can shave. Because in this town, in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim, it's like two Batei Dinim in one town. Everybody knows the minhag of Sfaradim. Everybody knows the minhag of Ashkenazim. Could follow your minhag. He says, Machmir, Tavo Alav Bracha. It's good to, not shave for the extra time to follow the thing of the yeshiva, but passing like Rabbi. Also, there are other things that some say by minhagim there's no lot to do. Huh? Right. All of these things when you're davening by Ashkenazim, do you can somebody be a shliach tzibur? Can a Sephardi be a shliach tzibur by Ashkenazim? It's a little bit related. Okay. Anyways, let's go further. So Tashema. How much time do we have? Okay, we'll finish. Yeah. Tashema. Bimkomo shel Rabbi Eliezer, hayu kortim etzim la'asot pechamim b'Shabbat, la'asot barzel. So Rabbi Eliezer has a very interesting shita. Rabbi Eliezer holds. We all know that Brit Milah overrides Shabbat. If a scenario comes to, someone has to have a Brit Milah on Shabbat, we do the Brit Milah on Shabbat. Machshirei Milah, doing melacha to prepare for the Brit Milah, we hold does not override Shabbat. Right. Rabbi Eliezer held it did. And Rabbi Eliezer went so far to say that Bimkomo shel Rabbi Eliezer in his town, hayu kortim etzim, they would cut wood, la'asot pechamim, to make coals, b'Shabbat, la'asot barzel, to make a knife to do the Brit Milah. Meaning he's just showing you how far he would go. Anything that's related to the Brit Milah, you could do melacha for it. That was the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. And it's saying in his town, they actually did it. Even though in the other towns,
Or
they
someone
didn't
just
do this.
make a fire and make to make a knife.
Yes, that's what they did in the town of Rabbi Eliezer.
That doesn't make sense.
Okay, according to Rabbi Eliezer, it made sense. Maybe we'll put your name in here. Next time they write the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer, and says Amunem says.
How many chilul he does on Shabbat? A lot of chilul.
He holds that it's mutar. We have a lim. How do you know that Brit Milah is mutar on Shabbat? We have a limud for it. So included in the limud of that we learn you're allowed to do melacha to do the Brit Milah. He learns you're allowed to do melacha for additional things also that have to do with the Brit Milah. But not for now. That's when we get to Shabbat B'ezras Hashem. Okay, so that was Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Bimkomo shel Rabbi Yossi Haglili hayu ochlim basar of bechalav. In the place of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, they used to have chicken together with milk. That's Rabbi Yossi Haglili's opinion was that was mutar. That's not the halacha. We paskin that it's asur, but his opinion that was mutar. Bimkomo shel Rabbi Eliezer in bimkomo shel Rabbi Akiva lo. When do we say that you're allowed to, that they would do, not you're allowed, but when do we say that they would do the preparations, malacha, to do preparations for Brit Milah? That was in the town of Rabbi Eliezer, not in the town of Rabbi Akiva. So you see, in different towns, they did different things. Titania, Klal Amar Rabbi Akiva, Kol malacha she'efshar la'asotam erev Shabbat, eina dochet ha-Shabbat. Rabbi Akiva taught that any malacha that's possible to do from Erev Shabbat, you can make the fire and make the knife and whatever Erev Shabbat, you're not allowed to do it on Shabbat. So the Gemara says, obviously, V'hai mai tiyufta, mikomot shani. What question were we even asking over here? That, you see in Rabbi Eliezer's place they did this, and in Rabbi Yossi Haglili's place they did that. They had milk and chicken. What's the question? It was in different towns. We said each town, this town goes like this Rav, and that town goes like that Rav. That's not a problem. We said, mekomot shani, different places can have different minhagim, different piskei halacha. That's fine. So the Gemara says, v'dekari my karila. The one who was asking the question, what was he thinking? There was some havamina that since Shabbat is so strict, we don't have this, and all the towns have to follow the same guidelines. It's all like one place. So Kamash Malan that we don't say that. Okay, Tashema.
Is it Tashema coming to prove it? Are we trying to prove Rava and Abai in Rava and Abai's machlokas, or are we?
We're trying to show we're getting involved whether or not asu or not. Beit Shammai asu kedivrehem or not.
So right now we're bringing rayas to say that Beit Shammai.
That different places that different chachamim did like their own psak neged the rest of the kahal, the rest of the chachamim.
That's what we're trying to prove.
Yes, and then we're gonna get into Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel also. Okay, let's try to. We have like 5-6 minutes. Let's try to get to the bottom of the Amud. Tashema, Rabbi Avau ki ikla la'ater de Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi have metaltel sharga, v'chi ikla la'ater de Rabbi Yochanan lo have metaltel sharga. So Rabbi Avahu, when he was in the town of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, he would carry a candle on Shabbat after it extinguished. When he was in the town of Rabbi Yochanan, he wouldn't do it because he knew they had a machloket. This was Rabbi Yochanan's psak. This was Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi's psak. So when he was in Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi's town, he would move it. When he was in Rabbi Yochanan's town, he wouldn't move it. So the Gemara says, "V'hai mai kushya." What's the question over here? V'lo amrinan mikomot shani. Different places have different minhagim. So in this place he has this minhag, in that place he has that minhag. What's the problem? So the Gemara says, no, this is the question. Anan hachika amrinan. Rabbi Avau hechi avid hacha. Hacha hachi, v'hechi avid hacha hachi. Question is, Rabbi Avau, how did he do this? How come in one place he did one thing, and in another place he did another thing? So the Gemara says, that's not a question. Rabbi Avau, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi Svirale. Rabbi Avau really holds like Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, that it's mutar. After the candle is out, it's mutar to move it. Ki mikla la'ater de Rabbi Yochanan, when he got to the place of Rabbi Yochanan, lo hava mitaltel. He wouldn't do it. Why? Mishum kivodo de Rabbi Yochanan. Because out of respect of Rabbi Yochanan, not to go against his psak. That's not a problem. What's the problem over there? So the Gemara says, v'ha'ika sham'a. The Gemara says, but his shamash is around. So what's the question? So Rashi understands. The question is, if you look at Rashi says, "Va'ika shama Rabbi Ava delo masika da'ateu umtaltel ba'atu de Rabbi Yochanan. What about the shamash? The shamash might carry the candle. He might move around the candle in the place of Rabbi Yochanan, because the shamash just sees that his Rav carried it in the town of Rabbi Ava, so he's gonna come do it in the other town. He doesn't know that he's not supposed to do it in Rabbi Yochanan's town. So the Gemara says the model is Shammai. He tells the shamash.
What would be the problem? The shamash doesn't listen, doesn't know.
Because he's gonna be going against Rabbi Yochanan's psak in his town. Okay, so let's go further. Tashema. Afa pi she'elu osrim ve'elu matirim. Even though these are oser and these are matir, meaning Beit Shammai is oser and Beit Hillel is matir. What's Beit Shammai oser and what's Beit Hillel matir? To do yibum to the co-wife of an erva. Right, again, our whole Mishnah that at Sarat erva was patur, the first Mishnah, was only according to Beit Hillel. The second Mishnah threw a curveball and said Beit Shammai said that the co-wives are allowed to do yibum. There's a mitzvah to do yibum. They're not paturot. So we said Afa pi she'elu osrim ve'elu matirim lo nimnu Beit Shammai milisa nashim mi Beit Hillel. Beit Shammai did not refrain from marrying the ladies of Beit Hillel. Velo Beit Hillel mi Beit Shammai. And Beit Hillel did not marry the ladies of Beit Shammai. Did not refrain from marrying the ladies of Beit Shammai. So let's play it out a little bit. The Gemara is going to play it out. It says, if you say that Beit Shammai did not do like their psak and they followed Beit Hillel, okay, so that makes sense. Mishumachi lo nimnu. That's why Beit Shammai, they didn't refrain from marrying each other, because Beit Shammai followed the psak of Beit Hillel. Ela amrit asu. If you say Beit Shammai did like their own psak, right? Again, this is the guys who came in. This amud and the next amud also. The following Amud, it's all going to be discussing whether Beit Shammai followed their own psak. When Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel have machloket, did Beit Shammai follow their own psak, or did they follow whatever Beit Hillel followed? It's a big machloket. So says the Gemara, if you say that they followed their own psak, so then if you say that they followed the psak of Beit Hillel, so then that makes sense why they would marry each other, because there's no issue. But Ela'i Amrit Asu, if you say they followed their own psak, so Amailo Nimnu, why wouldn't they refrain from marrying each other? So let's play it out here. Bishlama Beit Shammai mi Beit Hillel lo nimnu. So Beit Shammai wouldn't refrain from marrying people from Beit Hillel, because what's the worst that could happen? Beit Hillel holds that you can't do yibum to the tzara. Okay. So they let the tzara go, no yibum, no chalitza. So the tzara would go and get married to somebody without yibum or chalitza. So what's the worst that could happen? The child is a child, it's not a mamzer, it's a child from a chayve lavin, from an isur that the lady was supposed to get chalitza. She didn't get chalitza, she went and was with somebody else and had a child. So that child, according to Beit Hillel, that's a great, fine, that child is fine. According to Beit Shammai, that child is also fine. It's not a mamzer. There was no karet here. So what's the worst? It's bnei chayve lavin. That's not so crazy. The bnei chayve lavin ninu. Ella Beit Hillel mi Beit Shammai. But if you flip it the other way around, so according to Beit Shammai, this lady, the tzarat erva, is allowed to do yibum. According to Beit Hillel, she's pitura from yibum, which means she's an erva. She's the brother's wife in a scenario where she's pitura from yibum. It's an isur karet. So if she does yibum, according to Beit Hillel, that child that comes from that relationship is a mamzer. So ela Beit Hillel mi Beit Shammai, but Beit Hillel taking kids from Beit Shammai, amai lo nimnu. Why would they not refrain from it? Bnei chayve kiritut mamzerim ninhu. This child is coming from a chayav karet situation. Again, the case is Reuven has two wives. One of them is an erva to Shimon, the other one is not. Reuven dies. So everyone agrees the wife who's an erva, there's no yibum, no chalitza. The question is the co-wife. So Beit Shammai says, yeah, she does yibum. Beit Hillel says, no, she's piturah from yibum. So according to Beit Hillel, if she does yibum, and they have a child, that child is a mamzer. So you have these kids of Beit Shammai walking around that are, according to Beit Hillel, mamzerim. So why would they not refrain from marrying each other? So the truth is, Rashi in the Mishnah already told us the answer. Maybe you'll tell me, oh, Beit Hillel holds there's no mamzer from chayav kritut, only from chayve mitot bedin. So this wouldn't create a mamzer. V'amar Rabbi Elazar, afal pi shenichleku Beit Shammai Beit Hillel betzarot modim she'en mamzer ela mimi she'isur isur erva. We said that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, even though they have a machloket about the co-wives, but they agree that anything that is an erva, that's karet, creates a mamzer. Erva v'onish karet. So elalav shma mina lo asu. So the Gemara says, you see from here, it must be that Beit Shammai did not do like their own psak. Because if they did like their own psak, why would Beit Hillel marry their children? Exactly. So the Gemara says, lo, no, you have no proof from me. Leolam asu. Really, I could tell you that Beit Shammai did like their own psak. And how did Beit Hillel marry their children? Demodi lehu uparshi. That they, Beit Shammai would tell Beit Hillel that, listen, these according to you, these children are mamzerim. Don't marry these. According to you, they don't have a good yichus. So they wouldn't refrain from completely marrying anyone from Beit Shammai. So achinami mistabra, this also makes sense. The Ketani seva kol tarot v'atemeyot shayu el mutarim ve'el mutamin lo nimnu osin tarot. Okay, we'll save this for tomorrow. We have to put on tefillin.